All right, everyone, I'm going to call this meeting to order at 5:04 p.m. But before we start off, let's begin with territorial land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the SFSS is located on the traditional unceded territories of Osage people, including Musqueam, Squamish, Swahili, Coquitlam, and Catsi nations. Unceded meaning territories never been handed over, given up, sold, or to any capacity surrendered by these nations. And we are currently situated in occupied territories. So if you want to figure out where you are situated at currently, you can look at nativeland.ca on Burnaby campus. So mine's pretty accurate, but if you are calling in from somewhere else, it's always nice to keep in mind as to whose lands you're on. So as we move through the roll call of attendance, when I call your position, please state your name, your pronouns, and your access needs. I will start with myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Judith. She, her pronouns, and all my access needs are met. Ex officio is not here, so we're going to move to VP Finance.
Hi, everyone. My name is Abby, he, him pronouns, and I'm just a bit slow because I have a fever at the moment, so please excuse me.
Okay. We can move on to Mathematics Counselor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ben, pronouns he, him, his, and all my access needs are met.
Okay, awesome. Psychology Counselor.
Hi, my name is Mark, he, him, all my access needs are met.
Thank you, Mark. And Society of Arts and Social Sciences. Oh, Hill in the chat. Hi, my name is Hillary, she, her. My headphones are bad and my data is also bad. If I don't talk, I'll be fine, I think. All right, noted, Hillary. You hold on there. For society staff, we don't seem to have anybody on the call, so I guess we can move on. We can move to item number 4, which is consent agenda. Motion reads, be it resolved to adopt the consent agenda by unanimous consent. In the consent agenda, we have 4.1.1 matters arising from the minutes, and we have the governance minutes from September 30th in there. So I am going to go seek unanimous consent on this. If you wish to dissent, please raise your hand or indicate in chat, and I will call on you to record your vote. All right, seeing none, that carries unanimously, we can move on to item number 5, which is the adoption of the agenda. Motion reads, be it resolved to adopt the agenda as presented. Can I get a mover?
Math.
Moves, and I think I'm going to give VP Finance the second on that one. So I'm going to open up the floor for discussion or any amendments to be made. I am going to start off with myself. So I'm going to move to amend the agenda to strike off section 11 and 12 and renumber accordingly. I will also strike off 10.2 of the discussion items, which was reference and recommendations to HRP, and renumber accordingly. And then I'm going to move to add a discussion item titled R5 changes discussion, and then also add on something that will be now 10.4 outstanding policy sign off. So I'm going to move this. Can I get a second? Second, I will open the floor for discussion. I will list myself, just a little explanation to this. There's no more utility to having the in-camera discussions as pertaining to section 11 or 12 anymore. It's been handled, doesn't matter anymore. 10.2, the recommendation to HRP was already made based on the Google Doc we had. I already presented to HRP. They're aware as to our grievances with the personnel policies, so that's already handled, and we seem to be in need of discussing R5 lately, so I'm going to amend this on. But yeah, any thoughts, questions as to why we're basically overthrowing the agenda? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So I'm going to close the floor for discussion, and I will take us to a vote. I will seek unanimous consent. If you wish to dissent, please raise your hand or indicate in the chat. I'm seeing no objections to the amendment, so that is carried. So we're back to the main motion, which reads, be it resolved to adopt the agenda as amended at this point. Any more discussion or amendments? Okay, then I will take us to a vote. I will seek unanimous consent. If you wish to dissent, please raise your hand or indicate in chat. Being none, that's carried as amended. We can now move on to our first discussion item, which is personnel policy review, submitted by myself. As a reminder, just a little TLDR, if you forgot since our last governance meeting, we're still doing the personnel policy review. And like I already stated, we have already sent it to HRP regarding what should definitely be changed moving forward and how to go about it. So I did want to open up the floor, whether people had any thoughts, comments on what to do with personnel policies and anything that stood out to you. Anybody else that wants to talk about this other than me? Because I can ramble on about it, but I just wanted to get some clarity as to does anybody else want to talk about it. But I didn't see much feedback being left on them. Okay. So I guess yeah, Ben, go ahead.
So one thing that I just wanted to touch on, it's not necessarily an issue, so to speak, just something that I think we can make more concise. Looking at PP15 orientation, a lot of that is already covered in OTP1, and OTP1 is in some cases somewhat more extensive regarding new employee orientation than PP15 is. And also there seems to be some things that are on one but not the other. So I think what we ought to do is maybe reduce the complexity of PP15 and amend OTP1 to reflect some of the language found within it. Though I'm not firm on that as a solution to it, and would love to hear others' perspectives on the matter. Also, the comment, basically what I just said is in the Google Doc as well, written down.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I will, I guess, share some thoughts on it too. So yeah, it is kind of redundant, but yeah, I'm not sure why we have two separate policies for it, because it is kind of in relation to staff specifically as well. But yeah, one thing I didn't see that kind of bothers me personally is that there isn't training on our policies and bylaws and governance model in it, which I think is kind of problematic if you're working for a student organization that is by nature built on political stuff. So I don't know. I thought it was problematic. And I think something worthwhile adding in, but that's a good point. Yeah, so yeah, right, exactly, like high turnover. So like if somebody leaves like 6 months and we hire somebody new, it's not great if people don't necessarily know what is going on in this organization and how it works. So it would ideally be better if we would have that included in policy, that something needs to happen. That is a training that needs to occur. But yeah. Something I wanted to flag is actually PP34. I'm not sure people saw, it's the safely working alone policy. There's something in it that I'm not sure whether it might conflict our issues policies, because it refers to calling like campus public safety. And yeah, like I know we passed the amendment to pass on to council for that IEP specifically, but currently as is, it kind of conflicts with it regarding calling like emergency services. So I think we need to get that line out of the IEP ASAP. But yeah. Abby, you have a list? You can go ahead.
Yeah, I can comment a little bit on that. I'm not sure if this part directly contrasts the issues policies because we aren't technically calling them into the building or utilizing our services. We're just letting them know that we're there. So that may be the loophole, but I'm not sure if that's part of the issues policy as well, as we can't even let them know what's happening. I'm not sure off the top of my head if that's how strong the issues policy is.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think what sticks out for me specifically is this part in 34.6. I posted in chat. It just reads, the staff must call campus public safety to check in every 2 hours or the predetermined time or intervals. If they do not check in, security will attempt to get in touch with the person via phone. If they do not answer, the security personnel will be sent to the employee's location to verify their safety and well-being. So in that regard, they would be coming into the building. So yeah. Let's just handle the request we got from JHSC, and I think we can go from there. But yeah. Anybody have any other comments on this policy? Because yeah, one thing that we talked about HRPs, a lot of these will require us to get a consultant in here, make sure we don't mess it up to irreversible extents. But I think something we can get started working on is basically blending PP4 conflict of interest with PP7, which is employment of relatives, because employment of relatives is a conflict of interest. So I think what we can do is probably start blending those two policies. Ben, you have a list, go ahead.
I was just looking, when I was looking over PP35 with regards to professional development, just somewhat weirdly, I think there's a minor typo in Article 26.2 of the collective agreement, because it says up to 2,000 will be available to each employer per fiscal year for the purpose of professional development. I'm almost certain that should say employee and not employer based on PP35 and the rest of the wording of Article 26.2.
Yeah, it's possible. Okay. It sounds like a union question. Anybody have any other thoughts? Not, I can continue rambling on. A couple other things I think are worth noting. I think we can pass this without much issues per se, is looking at some of the language in PP8. I already flagged this and I kind of want to circle back to it when PP 8.8, what we mean by suitability. So just expanding as to what that means. So adding next sub clause like suitability may refer to available time to work, prior experience, et cetera, et cetera. I think that would be useful. So we actually are defining what suitability is. So in a couple of years down the line, we don't have people interpreting that word in also fun different ways to bias in our hiring practices. But yeah. Yeah, Ben, go ahead.
One other minor note I'd make, and I think we need to look at the CA a bit more thoroughly, is that under Personnel Policy 35.4A, It says that a permanent full-time SFSS employee is eligible for reimbursement of 100% of blah, 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 up to a maximum of $2,000 in any one fiscal year, and that the amount is an annual eligibility and cannot be carried forward to future fiscal years. However, under Article 26(2)(f), it does somewhat explicitly outline a process for carrying over these fees. So that might be something we want to look at correcting, if that's the case.
Okay, so just for some context here, these personal policies were last amended, I want to say 4 months before the collective agreement was signed. So I can definitely see how there would be some inconsistency. There's a lot of inconsistency, especially in reference to staff and who are defined as staff and who are defined as volunteers. So that will also have to be clarified. A lot of things, for example, like PP2 are not up to, doesn't specify as to that relates to non-unionized or unionized staff. So that has to be clarified. So it's actually on board with the CA, but that's a good point. If people could go through it in the coming weeks and just like highlight things that seem to be in conflict with the CA, so we can like flag it, that would be great. But Abby, you have the floor.
I'm going to speak to this from a budget side. We did not allocate for people to carry more than $2,000. So that's a problem. And I'm slowly realizing what a nightmare to make an accurate budget is going to be for next year with all the stuff that is in a similar place as this, where it's just not allocated for properly. I would not wish this work on my worst enemy. So I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you, Abby. That sounds dreadful. Have fun with that. Yeah, I would not love the VP Finance right about now. But yeah, I think a couple things that still need to be carried over, and it'd be good for B to be here for this, but I do think a lot of the policies would have to be, we should have like the privacy officer added in. And I think we can do that without having to do any consultant looking at it. I think it's reasonable to add in the privacy officer. We just would need B to sign off on it. Specifically thinking about like PP3 confidentiality, that would definitely be of use, and disciplinary practice policies should probably have the privacy officer included. But those are the main things. I think we can spend a couple of days identifying the ones that we can propose amendments for without a consultant, but I think a lot of them might need one. But yeah. Any other thoughts, comments on these? Okay, no? All right, cool. Then we can move on to what is now 10.2, policy reconciliation update. Okay, so I'm gonna make this relatively quick. So because we have the by-election referenda and general meeting that we had going on, policy team was a bit busy, but I think moving forward we can really make sure every single policy that we had was reconciled. Obviously a great example of not reconciled policy is actually personnel policy, because we have the new PP2 on there, which was building closure, that was never reconciled. So once the policy team has a moment, I will probably send them some things to reconcile, add back into policy. For example, that one. But regarding the policy changes we did pass, things that we passed for election referenda have been all reconciled with the exception of digital campaigning. So that will be reconciled when the policy change that we passed at the last council meeting will be. So that should be done in the coming days or weeks. Oh, I think Hillary just fell out the call. Okay. But yeah, council policies are still a bit messy, so I'm still looking at the draft. And then if that ends up being okay, I would tell B to send it off to comms and reconcile it. But yeah. If you see anything, like any policy that disappeared or is wrong or like we haven't reconciled and we passed it a long time ago, let me know and I will flag it to BD. But I just want to make sure we actually like keep reconciling the policy that we changed so we don't forget that we changed it. But yeah, I think we can probably wrap up that in the coming months and have nice and shiny new policy documents online. Any thoughts, comments, questions for me? You obviously can't ask BD, so any questions for me specifically? Okay, I am taking that as a no, that's fine. So we can move on to 7.3, which is R5 changes discussion. So I wanted to talk about this mostly because we didn't really touch R5. And the reasoning for it was because it didn't seem like something that would become pertinent to look at. But I did want to show a couple of changes that I think might be useful for us to make for R5. So I'm just going to quickly pull this up. So can I get somebody in the chat telling me if they can see my screen or not?
Yes, I can see it.
Awesome, thank you. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Abby. Cool. So a couple of things. I had beef with this title for a very long time. I don't like how it's worded, so I think we should probably rename it ethics standards, comma, conduct, comma, and conflict of interest for council because ethical standards aren't necessarily conduct, and conduct isn't necessarily ethical standards. So those are two separate things, but that's just my pet peeve. That's the least of our problems. So something I think worthwhile probably changing would be 5.2 and probably replace this members of council and society committee shall and replace it with members of council shall act with respect and with good faith during their elected terms, council members shall, and then it outlines everything you should probably do. Something I propose we add and renumber accordingly after is a new section B, which basically says they need to act civilly and with professionalism in a public setting, such as members, councils, executive committee meetings, and public engagements. I think that's worthwhile adding in, because I think even if we don't get along, we should probably not publicly voice it to the membership on a public platform. I think that's very unprofessional on our behalf. And I also think it kind of undermines this whole idea that council is more of a collective than is an individuality, which ironically is outlined in policy. A council shall recognize their lack of individuality when engaging with the public and the media. Like, it looks really bad when we bicker for in front of the public. So if you have issues with people, maybe address it with some level of civility and professionalism, and maybe just go for criticizing like the actual issue, not the people, because it comes off very problematic when we start screaming in meetings, which has happened a lot, not just this year, but the years prior. So I think that's worthwhile adding in. Something that we should probably amend here in this one is just to replace the Human Rights Act with Bylaw 21 and the BC Human Rights Code, because that's more specific. From some background, Bylaw 21 is prohibition on discrimination, which relates pretty well given the fact that we're outlining like you cannot discriminate against people because of language, religion, marital status, sexual orientation, gender, disability, economic status, political affiliation, and all these things. So I think this is more specific and more related to us. Something I would like some thoughts on is what to do with this specifically. I think there it's very vague as to what that means. I do think this should be clarified as to what this means. So if anybody has any ideas of how we can reword this to make it more applicable, that'd be great. Everything else on here is pretty decent. Obviously I fixed the numbering on here, so we don't have like crazy letters left, right, and center anymore. But something also worthwhile adding in, I think, is disciplinary action. So if you remember, this section should be very small and just basically has these things on there. I think we should probably have more of an escalatory process established in policy as to what you can do with discipline. I think the first step should be an informal resolution, which is a very fancy way of basically saying, talk out your problems with the person you have it with and do it at your own time. I think we would have a lot of our problems solved just that way. So I think that is worthwhile adding in, and then just separate formal disciplinary action. So we have still the censure, request to resign, and then remove, well, as a counselor by membership. So that's still going to be there. But the one part I'd recommend doing is like adding in this section, which would be when seeking steps of formal discipline, the following thresholds need to be met. The first one is the potential policy breach shall be identified. So you actually have to sit down and think, did they actually break this policy? And then section B would be the responding counselor shall be given formal notice of 2 weeks in writing before any disciplinary motion is taken to council or any investigatory committee. This notice shall include date of potential policy breach, policy outline attached, outline investigatory timeline, potential discipline, and opportunity to submit evidence in their defense. So the reason we're going to do it is for due process, because we can't expect people to necessarily know that you need to do that. So I think it's better to put it in writing. And then a new section C that, like, any consideration of private information must be considered in camera. We do not want people to literally air their dirty laundry on a public recording, because it probably violates PIPA or something along those lines. So anything that's like a private information, whether they're like, I don't know, like people's like medical history or I don't know, like their private messages, those things should not be considered ex camera probably. So yeah, these are the couple things I think are worthwhile adding in. But I did see Ben had a list, so I'm just gonna hand over the floor.
Yeah, so in terms of your edit to 5.2, just strictly to 5.2, I agree with you. That's kind of been a pet peeve of mine, the fact that we also would enforce this on society committees, because we have some society committees with like staff and their joint society committees as well. It's always kind of been weird to me as to how we could possibly enforce this on necessarily every member of a society committee. Yeah, I would agree as well to 5.2D that it is quite vague as to what a person associated with the SFSS is. And lastly, I think in your thing on disciplinary action, I'm glad you have removed the wording that's currently removed as a counselor by council or counselor, however that's phrased. But I think we might want to add in either a new section C, renumber C to D in 5.5 that's removed as a counselor by council if the counselor is a non-executive, or however you want to phrase that.
Yeah, it's a good point. Should probably specify. Yeah, we don't want it to come off as because you can impeach non-executive counselors via council. You don't need to go to membership for it. That's a good point. Abby, you have a list. Go ahead.
Thank you. As far as the points around what would be considered like not misconduct, but like treating people properly, I think if there's any sort of formal definition we can find of basic human decency, I looked around and I couldn't really find anything, I think that'd be something good to include, or some level of like keeping people human, something to basically just prevent like dehumanization of people for speaking their opinions, I think would be the baseline to start with.
That's a good point. One of the issues I ran into with that is there might be a conflict around that regarding our issues policies. So we can't, that's something to keep in mind. That's my only thing. We can probably add in some kind of definition as to when speaking to matters in a public setting, you are limited to criticizing the issue at hand rather than the people involved. I think that's something worthwhile adding in. But I don't know. I always thought it was weird that like council can create issues policies, given the fact that they're issue stances and the only people, in my opinion, who should be allowed to do that should be the membership. But anyway, that's just my pet peeve. So we can definitely look into that and see how we can define it better. But the reality of it is like when things actually do happen in real time, it's going to be very hard to like make things fit into a definition. That's the only issue, because situations are so nuanced. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what we can do about that. Anyway, any thoughts on this? Comments? Okay. Oh, Ben. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
So, with regard to 5.1, just something I've thought about is we say that proper operation of a democratic student organization requires that students elected or appointed to council or society committee be duly responsible to the membership. To this end, it is imperative that blah, 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 blah. And we don't actually, I guess I wonder what disciplinary action one could take against a member of a society committee who isn't a member of council, say a student at large or whatever, who were to breach 5.1A or 5.1B. Just something I'd thought about.
Sorry, just casually find my computer to unmute. That's a good point. I was thinking about that too, especially because a lot of the committees do have member at larges on there. And I was thinking about that too, like how would these policies apply to them, and whether when people wrote this, did they have at large members in mind? Like, obviously at this point, it obviously wouldn't affect staff, because even staff are in committees, it wouldn't affect staff, but it would impact students at large. And I'm not sure what you would do, because these specifically do speak to counselors specifically. So I'm not sure how members at large would come in. And I also don't know on what grounds you would have to discipline member at larges, because they don't hold the same like requirement for like fiduciary duties as a counselor would. So I would be partial to almost like add in line excluding them for simplicity's sake, but I'm open to suggestions. Ben, yeah, but let's go ahead.
Yeah, I guess my take would be, do we just want to remove the society committees section entirely? Because my understanding is there are basically only 3 kinds of people who can be on society committees: counselors, staff, and student at larges. Staff, clearly this couldn't apply, like this whole disciplinary process couldn't apply to it all, because that would all be under the CA or in other places, depending on whether they're unionized or non-unionized staff. And for student at larges, this couldn't apply either, because all of the disciplinary process we outline is for counselors. So I'm wondering, do we even just maybe want to remove that language entirely? And if we want to develop language surrounding student larges, do that in another policy? Not sure.
Yeah, well, the suggestion I had for 5.2 was to replace it with members of council. So members of council would sit on committees, but obviously student larges wouldn't. So that might help. But at the same time, I'm kind of am concerned a little bit because, of course, the new section B committees again still have student at larges. So yeah, Ben, you would respond.
Sorry, to clarify, I understand we're doing that with 5.2. I'm just saying, do we want to expand that to 5.1 and 5.3?
Oh, never mind. Sorry, I got what you meant. Also, I have a question in chats. Wait, so would members of council include members at large? No, Mike, to answer your question, no. At large members do not sit on council. So no. The only question would be, would these things then apply to member at larges? I think that's what Ben is kind of getting at, because we still have society committees here, and society committees do hold at larges in there. So arguably we can just go that and delete that part, because it's a good point. And it's kind of redundant as well, because members of council do need to sit on committees anyway. And I'm not sure why we would not be allowed to hire a student at large for like a staff role, because R14 wouldn't apply in this case because they were never a board member. So yeah, it doesn't make any sense. So good point. I think we should probably annex that and probably, yeah, probably a good point. All right. Any other thoughts on this? Okay. I'm seeing none, so I'm going to stop sharing then. If there are no other thoughts on this, we can move on to the last discussion item. All right, cool. Let's do this. Which is outstanding policy sign-offs. So I'm gonna walk the line very carefully on this one. Will not get anybody into trouble. So, as some of you may know, there have been policies that governance has written or has written language for. Some going back as far as June, that have yet to receive sign-off from relevant society consultants, if you will. So at this point, it is becoming an operational backlog, and it is kind of now causing concerns. So I think at this point, we might need to consider other avenues to make sure we get consultation on those policies, so we can actually do pass them through council and we can actually enact those policies. And that might lead to us having to go to council and ask them for it, because this is getting ridiculous that we have policy with a 3-month backlog that has not been signed off on, when there was like maybe 3 lines that was changed in it. So yeah, So I think you can expect a working doc from me on the weekend that we get started on to basically, I think we need to ask for maybe $2,000 maybe in a line item to get an external policy consultant of some sort to governance, or maybe some kind of form of society lawyer. So make sure we're not permanently messing up our policies. So yeah, I do want to get people's thoughts on this, because I know we had things that have been long outstanding, and I swear it's not because I want it to be outstanding, it's because I don't want to pass it if it's not exactly up to par. Ben, you have a list?
I don't know how much I can say to this X camera, but all I'll have to say is good idea.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, it is becoming an issue, and I'm pretty sure a lot of those policies, even if they do need to be changed a bit, it's probably some minor edits that I think can get away with it being a relatively short, an inexpensive process. But at this point, we do just need to get it done. It's been a very long time, and now it's just ridiculous. So I don't know. I thought about just passing it and hoping that it's fine, but I don't want to take liability for something going very, very wrong if it was actually wrong, because I'm an undergraduate student. I'm not a lawyer. So I think at this point that needs to be done. And I think we waited long enough in goodwill. So yeah. So fun times. Anybody has any final thoughts on this, or does anybody just want to ask what this is about? Hasn't picked up on it yet, because I know we talked about this before, but in case people forgot. Okay, the silence is deafening here today. All right, cool. If nobody, any other comments, thoughts, questions on this, I will take your silence as yes, Judith, that's a great idea. Let's do it. Okay. Okay, then that's it. We have nothing else to discuss. We only have adjournment left on the agenda. Mark, I love that. Thank you. Mark is the hype man of this committee. We're going to just move on to the last item on the agenda, which is adjournment. Motion is be it resolved to adjourn this meeting at 5:47 p.m. I am going to move. Can I get a second?
Math.
Math seconds. I will open the floor for discussion. Seeing no discussion, I'll take it to a vote. I will seek unanimous consent. If you wish to dissent, please raise your hand in the chat. Seeing none, that is carried unanimously, and we are adjourned. I'm going to now stop the recording.